All right, everybody, good evening and welcome to Anderson University's Doctor of Physical Therapy information session. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We hope that you and your families are healthy and well. My name is Marissa Fatt, and I serve as the Associate Director of Recruitment and work with our Department of Health Professions. So we are going to kick off the webinar tonight with a short video, followed by an introduction of your speakers. Dr. Hinman, our program chair, will discuss why to pursue a degree in physical therapy, followed by highlighting what a physical therapist does in the field, and we'll also learn from Dr. Jessica Jacobs. From Dr. Jessica Jacobs, what sets AU apart from other PT schools, and Dr. Hinman will finish up with the accreditation status and the application process. At the end, we'll leave time available for questions, and you may also submit your questions in the online webinar chat room. Joining us in the chat room is our DPT enrollment counselor, Kelsey Solish, and our DPT professor and admissions coordinator, Dr. Chris Hopkins. So without further delay, the video.
I'm Martha Hinman, and I'm chair of the School of Physical Therapy at Anderson University.
I'm Marla Thomas.
And I'm David Medlin, and I chose to get a DPT degree because I've always kind of had a desire to be a part of medicine, and physical therapy gives you a little unique perspective.
So I came here about 3 years ago to officially start the program, and we launched it officially last summer when we admitted our first class. We have a lot of unique features at this program. We're the only one in South Carolina that's at a private institution. It's faith-based.
Getting a DPT was important to me, as being able to be a physical therapist gives you the opportunity to be with a patient 2 to 3 times a week for a couple hours, or an hour or two sometimes for multiple weeks, and that allows you to build that therapist-patient interaction so that you're able to not only help them heal their body part or whatever's going on, but you're also able to help them with their mindfulness and their soulfulness through faith.
The other uniqueness of our program is our SPICE program. It stands for Senior Partners in Clinical Education.
They are really there for us to practice our skills on that we learn in lab, and kind of just be there as mentors and people that are in our corner cheering for us.
And give them feedback on their communication skills, their handling skills, and those kinds of things before they go out in the real world and start interacting with real patients.
So I personally would recommend AU to anybody who's considering another program, just because it is shorter. We're only 8 semesters, where others are 9 and some are 10. That gives us a chance to get out sooner and start making a salary and putting our skills to work and making a difference, rather than still sitting in a classroom.
I tell students all the time that your patients don't always care how much you know, but they'll always know how much you care, and that it's very important that they communicate that health is probably one of their most prized possessions, and that they need to be respectful of the fact that they are privileged to be someone who's coming into that person's life at a time when they're in very desperate need often, to care for them and to give them the kind of support that they need.
Dr. Hinman is our program chair with over 40 years experience as a PT educator. Dr. Hinman mainly teaches our research courses. Also joining us tonight is Dr. Jessica Jacobs. Dr. Jacobs is instrumental in coordinating our clinical practicums and teaches our neurology courses.
I'm chair of the school.
There's a little bit of the audio. We'll share that with you guys right after this webinar. And also with us is Dr. Chris Hopkins. He's joining us through the webinar chat, so you'll see him pop up a little bit. And he teaches our anatomy, pathology, health behavior, and population health courses. So, Dr. Hinman, I know you've been on there. We can kind of hear you. In your many years of experience in the PT field, why would you tell students to pursue a physical therapy degree?
Well, I think one of the main reasons that physical therapy is an attractive profession is that, unlike some healthcare professions, PTs really have the opportunity to interact very closely with their patients and help them achieve their functional goals through physical activity and problem solving, and getting them back to doing the things that are meaningful to them. We're a very hands-on profession, so if you really enjoy interacting with people on a personal level and putting your knowledge of about the human body and how it moves into practice, then physical therapy may be a very attractive career choice. If you look at the screen here, you'll see that it's consistently listed among the top 10 of America's fastest growing professions, and one that provides the most job satisfaction. As a profession, there's opportunities for good earning potential, as you see here. Job mobility, career development as a clinical specialist or a manager, a researcher, or even an educator. The local and national employment data forecasts an increase in job opportunities for PTs well into the future due to our aging population and the influence of technological advancements that are helping people survive major, what used to be catastrophic injuries, and also just helping them live longer. In terms of salary, you'll see there the average salaries for PTs vary quite a bit by region and practice setting. But the number here that you see is the average salary in South Carolina, where the cost of living is probably a bit lower than it is in some other parts of the country.
And Dr. Hammond, there's sometimes misconception of what a PT does. Can you highlight for us what exactly this role entails?
Sure. It may be of interest to know that we're getting ready to celebrate the centennial of our profession, and over the past 100 years, physical therapy has evolved into a doctoring profession that specializes in the restoring and optimizing of human movement. So we're often referred to as movement specialists. Today's PTs don't simply administer treatments prescribed by a physician as they did in the past, but they're often the first point of contact for patients who've sustained an injury or an illness that limits their mobility. We can evaluate and diagnose these movement problems in both children and adults, and then prescribe treatment programs that help alleviate pain or strengthen weak muscles and joints, improve heart and lung function, heal wounds, and much more. And I think more importantly, PTs provide comfort and hope to people who have chronic illness or disability, such as kids with cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy or Down syndrome, and adults who are recovering from things such as brain and spinal cord injuries, stroke, arthritis, cancer, and a variety of other disabling conditions.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hammond. And just a reminder, if you guys have any questions along the way, definitely use the chat feature. I'd be happy to address those for you guys. Dr. Jacobs, can you share some highlights on what sets AU apart from other DBT programs?
Sure. So our program is the third PT program in the state of South Carolina, and it's the only PT program here in the upstate. We're the only private school, faith-based PT school in South Carolina, and it's our mission to integrate faith and learning within our program. We do this through open dialogue, serve as learning experiences, as well as spiritual and professional mentoring. Our motto of the program is serving Him by serving others. We have small class sizes, a small cohort of only 28 students that allows our faculty to provide one-on-one mentoring with our students. What this also means is that you'll have a family here to support you. We'll pray for your success along the journey. We value our students as individuals. We have opportunities to pursue specialized clinical interests, and allows you to have a greater input into where you go for your clinical practicums. And we're also the only program in South Carolina that interviews prospective students, and we value getting to know you as an individual. We have a total of 9 core faculty members with a faculty to student ratio of 1:9. So collectively we have more than 140 years of PT experience. Most of our faculty members still see patients weekly, and we hold specialty credentials in multiple areas of clinical practice, including orthopedics, manual therapy, neurology, pediatrics, cardiovascular pulmonary, geriatric, and pelvic health, and many other areas as well. Our program has a dedicated cadaver lab, which allows you the opportunity to learn anatomy from human cadavers. Another area that sets us apart from other programs is an 8-semester-long curriculum, when other programs are typically 9 to 10 semesters long. So what this means is that you'll graduate sooner than most other PT students, allowing you to enter the job market 4 to 9 months sooner, and the ability to earn a professional salary sooner easily offsets higher tuition costs for a private university. And finally, one of the highlights of our program is the Spice of Life program. SPICE stands for Senior Partners in Clinical Education. And with this program, we pair each student with an older adult from the local community who will help you practice your newly learned skills, provide encouragement and spiritual support, as well as celebrate your accomplishments along the way. So like I mentioned earlier, our curriculum is only 8 semesters long. We offer a variety of learning experiences, including the Human Cadaver Lab and state-of-the-art simulation labs. Our students have the opportunity to complete a variety of clinical experiences in outpatient, inpatient, long-term care, and a specialty area of your choosing. Because we're a small program, you have the opportunity to have more input into your clinical practicums and where you go. I'll personally work one-on-one with you to ensure good learning opportunities as we set up your clinical practicums and while you're out in the field working.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jacobs. And Dr. Himman, a big part of our program is, of course, our accreditation status. Can you talk through where we are right now with our status? Because I know you have been, that's been a big role of yours.
Yeah, it certainly has. And as a new program, there's a very detailed process that we go through to achieve full accreditation of the program. And it begins with a pre-accreditation process, which we completed last year. As it says here on the slide, we got our candidacy status. Candidacy means a candidate for accreditation. That status is required before we admit our first class of students. So we were granted that last spring, almost a year ago. And that was given by the Commission on Accreditation in Physical Therapy Education, which is better known by a lot of folks as CAPTE. CAPTE will then visit us again in the summer of 2021 when we're evaluated for our initial accreditation. They do this just a few semesters prior to the graduation of the first class, which is scheduled in December of 21. And the reason all of this is so important is that students must graduate from a CAPTE accredited program to be eligible to sit for licensure exam in any of the U.S. jurisdictions.
Okay, and Dr. Himman, can you finish up walking our students through the application process?
Sure. Beginning this year, students will be able to apply to our program through the centralized application service known as PT-CAS. You may not see our program listed on their website just yet. We just had a conference call with them earlier this afternoon because they are in the process of setting up our page and getting it developed and updating their website. But we were told that with the revisions and everything that we'll be submitting, that should be available around the 18th or 19th of May. If you're not familiar with PT-CAS website, it's listed there for you. It's ptcas.org. Basically, if you look at some of our requirements on the next slide, you'll see that we do require completion of a baccalaureate degree. That can be in any discipline as long as you're able to also meet the prerequisite requirements that you see listed here on the screen. If you have questions about specific courses, that's where our admissions counselor and coordinator would be very helpful in terms of helping you sort through those. Our scoring method considers 3 different GPAs, an overall GPA, a prerequisite GPA, and then specifically a math science GPA. We also recognize that some students maybe got off to a bad start their freshman year, so in looking at the overall GPA, we'll consider that or the last 60 hours, whichever is higher. We also look at GRE scores, and we look at a record of your service and leadership because that's an important part of our program's mission. The other things that are required are 2 personal references. We would like one to be from someone who's familiar with your academic potential. That could be your academic advisor or a past instructor. And we'd like the other one to come from someone who's familiar with your work or service history. So it could be a supervisor from a job, it could be a coach, it could be an organization sponsor, it could be a PT you've worked closely with. It doesn't have to be from a physical therapist. As I said, starting in this application cycle, we're also going to be requiring some new things, including a new online exam known as CASPER. This exam looks at how you might respond to various situational dilemmas. It can be taken on your home computer as long as you have a webcam, and then the scores will be reported directly to us. Finally, we ask you to record a brief video that introduces yourself and explains why you're interested in pursuing your DPT at Anderson. Applicants then will have a minimum score level that we look at in terms of who we invite for a personal interview in the fall. As Jessica mentioned earlier, we're the only PT program in South Carolina that does interview applicants, and we feel that process is just as valuable for you as it is for us, because it helps you determine whether our program would best meet your needs as an aspiring physical therapist. I also would like to just mention that everybody's so acutely aware of what's going on right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we recognize that that's disrupted operations on college campuses nationwide. We do not expect it to delay our admission cycle for next fall. If anything changes, we'll certainly notify you of that or post an announcement on our website. But we were told that PTCAS will be opening their website earlier this year, around mid-June, and then you can officially start to submit your applications by July 1st. But you could start working on those in the middle of June.
And again, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Dr. Himmen, Dr. Jacobs, Kelsey, Dr. Hopkins for being with us tonight. And most importantly, thank you guys for joining us and bearing with us with our audio program. I know Dr. Hopkins sent out that link in the chat, so you're more than welcome to click on it there and view later tonight. And then again, I'll also send that out to you. We'll close the webinar with any questions. And Dr. Hopkins, actually one for you. I know you've been answering the chat questions. I would love for you to jump on, and if you could kind of expand on what students do in the cadaver lab. I know that's one that I definitely get a lot, so I'd love to hear from you on that.
For sure. Thanks, Marissa. So, yeah, we have the cadaver lab on the main campus in Anderson, and so whenever you're taking in the first semester of the program, we have anatomy.
Dr. Himmen, if you could kind of touch on, so if a student, if our accreditation does not go through, I know students have definitely asked that question. Can you walk us through what would happen if we were not to receive full accreditation?
Sure. The accreditation process is very thorough, and so one of the things that was encouraging to us is that we went through the pre-accreditation process without a single citation. So in other words, we were given the red light that everything that we had planned was appropriate, and that if we implemented our plan, it would we had a good chance of achieving accreditation. So having said that, there's always things that can go wrong. There's always things that can change. But we do have a contingency plan, and the contingency plan involves a number of other accredited programs that have agreed to allow our students to transfer their credits to their programs so that they could complete their education and they wouldn't just lose the opportunity to graduate as a physical therapist. But the first thing that would happen would be that we would appeal the decision. And there is a specific process for doing that. And most of the time, if there's an issue that we can resolve fairly quickly, then they grant the accreditation retroactively. I've been involved with PT accreditation for, oh gosh, since the late 80s. And so I know it pretty well. I've served on the commission, and I think I think that we're as prepared as we could be to complete that process successfully.
Okay, great. And Dr. Hopkins, I don't know if, I think you cut out, and are you still with us by chance?
Hey, Marissa, I'm back. Sorry about that.
All right. No, no worries. No, we're going with the flow. If you could, I think we cut out right as you were saying that students will start out in the cadaver lab on our main campus. Can you kind of jump back into that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think I was saying that that class is a lecture and then a big lab component. And so in lecture, we'll go through different regions of the body, talking about anatomical structure and then clinical correlations and why that anatomy is important to physical therapists. And then in the lab portion, we'll be able to see those anatomical structures that we talk about actually on cadavers. And then we're also beginning with this next time we're teaching it, we're implementing more virtual dissection too. So students will be able to do dissections on their computers in class and lab as well as at home. So it'll be a great study resource tool in addition to the stuff that we're doing in the cadaver lab as well.
Okay. And Dr. Hinman, we actually had a question in the chat. Is it possible to get a list of the schools that we have an agreement with to share with potential students?
No. That's really, there are several programs across the country, but they have a right to change their minds, and I would not want them to be obligated by publicly distributing that information. It's way too premature.
But it's fair to say that there are a lot to choose from, or several to choose from.
Well, yes. I mean, they couldn't, one program couldn't absorb our whole class. The different students would have to go to different programs throughout the country. You know, there would be no assurances that you and your best friend would get to go to the same program, for example. And there also would be no assurances that you wouldn't have to take some additional coursework, because every program has different degree requirements. So the accrediting body doesn't actually require us to do anything other than inform you if we have a contingency plan, but the university felt obligated to take that extra step. And it is my hope that we would never have to implement it. We have not seen a PT program denied initial accreditation in, several decades. So
that's good news.
I don't think it's something that should be high on your worry list.
Good. And Dr. Jacobs, I see that we've had a couple questions about clinical practicums. Anything else that you want to highlight or touch on in looking at clinical practicums?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, Marissa, we have 4 different full-time clinical practicums that are spread out throughout the curriculum. So after your first year of classes, you have the opportunity to go for an outpatient clinical setting as well as an inpatient clinical settings. And this is really to help students tie together what they're learning in the classroom and have an opportunity to practice that early on with patients. And then finally, before you graduate, you'll do 2 back-to-back 10-week clinical rotations. One will be in a long-term care setting, and the other one is in a specialty area of your choice. So we allow you to have some input in the type of setting that you may be interested in, or a type of patient population that you're really interested in of getting a little bit more extra practice and experience with prior to graduation.
Wonderful. And Dr. Hopkins, I don't know if you've seen this question, but will AU students have all the prerequisites needed for the program?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne, for asking that question. So the curriculum for Anderson University Pre-Physical Therapy should cover most of the prerequisites. However, you still need to make sure that you complete like the 3 social science requirements, because that's not necessarily a requirement for the pre-physical therapy program, but you'd have to use some of the elective hours within that program to make sure that you'd be covered. For instance, I think that I'm not sure if that program requires a second chemistry course, which is like a prerequisite for our program. So you'd have to use some of those elective hours to make sure you take a second chemistry course and each of the social science courses.
And JC had a great question about the GRE. Obviously, there's cancellations. I know there's some stress with that. We were just talking about that, how students are able to potentially take that at home. Does anybody want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of ease some people's minds about how we will accept that GRE if it's proctored?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we've looked into exactly what GRE is doing with the home courses, and so they use Proctor U service to make sure it's proctored, so that way we can be sure that the integrity of the test is still in place. So that's an option that you can take. And also, whenever at the time that you apply, you don't necessarily have to have your final GRE scores. You can continue to update your application. For instance, if you take the GRE one time and you're not quite happy with what your score is, but you go ahead and apply, and then whenever you retake the GRE, if you decide to do so, then you would just notify us of those updated scores as well.
Great. And Dr. Hopkins, actually, one more for you. If a student has not taken the medical terminology, what other course would you accept in place of that? I know you've had a couple suggestions out of state classes.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we know that those courses aren't always really readily available on many campuses. And so to combat that, what we've done, there's a self-study online course that's actually through Des Moines University. If anybody has any specific questions about me for that, they can email me those, but I can send you a link to it. And it's just a self-paced course that you work through, and they have completion, a certificate of completion that you can request, things like $99 that certifies that you completed the course. Then you would just add that, you would upload that with your application materials to demonstrate that you completed that prerequisite. So that's an option for the medical terminology course.
Okay.
Marissa, I would like to mention a couple people were asking about financial aid and scholarships. We are a young program, so we do have 2 scholarships designated for the physical therapy program, but they're growing. One of them is an endowed scholarship called the Rammel Endowed Scholarship that will be given to a first-year student. And the second one is a scholarship that's sponsored by the local Parkinson's Association, and that goes to a second-year student. So we are still trying to, develop more of those opportunities, and we have a list of other external scholarships that students can apply for. Whenever we get announcements about those, we always circulate them to our students so that they can certainly take advantage of those opportunities.
Okay. All right. Well, again, we appreciate everyone's time tonight. I'll actually be sending each of you a follow-up email. I'll have the recording of our webinar tonight. I'll also include some details about financial aid and then all of those application details that we talked about tonight. So you guys can look through all those. If you have any questions that we did not address tonight, feel free to reach out to my email address on the screen. I can help address those or put you in touch with one of our faculty members, again, to help get those answered. Again, thank you guys so much. Prayers to you and your loved ones. Stay safe, stay well, and good night. Thanks, everybody.